Hello. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can go about planning a scheme of work. Okay, so what will we cover in this video? Well, first of all, I'm going to explain what a scheme of work actually is. I'm going to look at what a scheme of work should contain and how you can plan and document your scheme of work in a format that is universally understood across multiple organisations. Now, there are multiple ways that this can be done. I'm just going to show you how I would go about doing this. You know, your organisation can differ and they will have their own templates and documentation. But I will provide you with a template for a document that I would use. So if your organisation doesn't dictate one, then you're more than welcome to use this. So, a scheme of work. Well, essentially, it plans a complete journey or project or unit of study. So literally it will dictate a series of sequential lessons, and it should plan for what the learners need to know from that topic. How would you find out what the learners need to know? Well, that all comes down to you and your subject knowledge and understanding of the syllabus that it is that you're teaching. So, the scheme of work, what should it contain? Well, it should detail what the qualification learners are working towards. Essentially, a good scheme of work, you should be able to give that and disseminate that to other members of staff, and they should be able to pick it up and be able to deliver it to an appropriate guidance. A scheme of work is usually given by a head of a department or head of faculty to their teachers and staff underneath. So in the scheme of work, it should detail what it is the learners are working towards, what qualification title, what unit title, etc. It should also dictate what the exam board requires for learners to achieve that unit or qualification. They may state that learners cannot be taught any longer than 30 hours on this topic, for example. They may also dictate to you that they need to be in controlled conditions where learners aren't allowed to talk and communicate with each other. Whatever it is, your scheme of work needs to detail that. You should also think about how you are going to implement core skills within your lesson. It is every teacher's responsibility to be teaching English, Maths and ICT throughout every single lesson. How are you going to embed that? What options could you advise the teachers to implement within their lessons? Your scheme of work should also identify assessment opportunities. Now that can be the initial assessment right at the start of the subject where you're doing some sort of baseline test. You can also think about assessment for learning throughout the lesson, whether that's certain types of question and answer that should be done, peer and self-assessment for example, which feeds into the formative assessments throughout the learning journey, and then right at the end hopefully you will be looking at a suitable summative assessment to conclude the scheme of work so that you can test how much of what it is that learners should know, do know. Within the scheme of work, you need to summarise how the teacher could deliver that learning objective. So you're not telling them what to do, but you could give them a suitable delivery guidance, whether that is this is best taught by a teacher observation, or this is best taught by a sequence of tutorial videos, etc. So, we've just talked about what it should contain. Let's go about a few steps that I personally would go about when planning a new scheme of work or new syllabus for my learners. So, step one, this is probably the most important thing. You need to study the course specification, whatever national curriculum guidance there are on that topic. You need to know that inside and out, really. How you do that? Well, you would gather appropriate textbooks. You know, when you're working with an exam board, they will often advise you certain textbooks and resources that can help. Gather as much of that and read and understand what it is that is required. You need to work out what the exam board's guided learning hours recommendation is for that subject. They may state that learners need to work at least 60 guided learning hours on a certain topic. So you need to make sure that whatever you're planning fits your timetable. If you're given 1 hour a week for 6 weeks, is that going to be enough? There's no point you devising a plan for something that just isn't physically capable of squeezing into the time that you have. You need to make sure that the subject that you're teaching is appropriate for the level of students that you have. If you are working with students whom have very basic English and maths, you're not going to go in teaching a subject that is going to be far above them. So you need to check the target level for your course is suitable for the potential students that you're taking through. It's also good practice to gather any past papers for your subject. If it is a formal examination subject, gather those papers. From there, you'll be able to get a flavour for the type of questions and the type of theory that your learners need to know. It's not fully inclusive, however, because some exam papers will miss out a certain topic, but it gives you a good idea of the type of language and the type of level of questions your learners will need to be able to competently answer. In some subjects, well, probably most subjects, you will have previous schemes of work for very similar topics. It may be good practice to reflect on how well those worked in previous years by looking at any past data for your learners, talking to your teachers that have delivered that in the past, which brings me forth to the final thing, which is very important: to network with other people within your organisation, other people outside of your organisation that are teaching the same topic. Sharing best practice is often underutilised and can really help you out massively. You can do this by, attending meetings, departmental meetings. Social networking is becoming ever more popular with the sharing of online resources and advice and guidance, etc. Now, step 2, I would go about now working out my learning objectives for each of the lessons. If I know I'm going to have roughly 6 lessons, and I know that learners need to be able to demonstrate and understand X, Y, and Z, then I'm going to use the Bloom's taxonomy verbs to help plan series of learning objectives that are appropriate for the position in which that lesson is going to be. I would personally probably have this on something like post-it notes so that you can order them and sequence them in an appropriate area, because at the end of the day, a scheme of work is a working document and can be adapted. You need to make sure that your learning objectives have a variety of challenge, so starting with those easier knowledge-based verbs, working your way through to the synthesis, analysis, evaluation stages, making sure that we're challenging all of the appropriate domains in accordance to Bloom's taxonomy, which we've looked at in a previous tutorial. Our lessons need to have clear progression, starting from point A, they understand how to do X, Y, and Z, through to being able to demonstrate it later on, potentially. Okay, step 3. You need to think about appropriate tasks and teaching activities. Some may lend itself perfectly to a classroom discussion or a demonstration. Some may lend itself nicely to independent research, whatever that looks like for your subject or topic. At this point, you're just suggesting the resources required. You're not necessarily going around and gathering them, because that all comes part when you're planning your lesson itself. But just a good suggestion will give teachers a good idea and give you a good idea what it is that would be appropriate for that topic. Again, you need to identify core skills that should be taught in that and suggesting opportunities where that can come about. Whether you can fit in some sort of extended writing activity through to the teaching of multiplication or whatever that looks like, you can embed those into pretty much every topic. You've just got to think how. Finally, step 4, you need to decide what the learning outcomes are actually going to be. This could be penciling down some success criteria. This could be looking at the artifacts that your learners need to produce for you. Where possible, you need to have a variety of assessment methods. You're not just sticking to question and answer, for example. You may want to have little tests, quizzes, classwork, marked classwork, peer and self-assessment opportunities maybe. You need to have a variety of methods just to keep learners engaged. We do need to plan a summative assessment at the end of the topic, so you need to think about what type of skills the learners have got to demonstrate. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk you through a scheme of work template. Now, You will have this template for you to use. Your organisations will probably have something very similar. You're welcome to use other organisations' templates as long as it has those key elements that I've just discussed in slide 4. So this is a scheme of work. It's titled Databases Term 3. Now, at the start of your scheme of work, you need to obviously detail the organisation where it's taught, the guided learning hours that the exam board require, obviously the title of the qualification, that will be useful, and the name and title of the topic itself. That should be close to the start. What I've done is I've picked to pieces the key aims for that module that the exam board require my learners to demonstrate. So I've literally explained that in this box here. My main summative assessment opportunities, well, I'm going to use exam-based questions to get my learners practiced in the art of writing exam answers, but also part of the learning is I'm going to be actually creating a relational database. So towards the end, I'm going to mark that and test that. General resources, well, I'm going to need database software, me personally, so making sure that is updated and working properly, and any past paper questions. General teaching activities is just a rough summary of the type of thing that I as a teacher will be doing. I'm going to be doing teacher-led tutorials, definitely. The learners are going to be wanting to conduct independent exploration, group discussions, that sort of thing. Here I'm just summarising the types of transferable skills. Now obviously this is an ICT-based topic anyway, with it being computing, but it's important that we just document those transferable skills, the word processing, spreadsheet modelling, data types, and programming is probably more subject specific, but useful in other subjects, of course. Numeracy and literacy, again, my learners are going to be required to write formulas, so making sure that they understand the BODMAS rules. They're going to be using logic, if statements, that sort of thing. Definitely working with percentages when working out VAT and things like that in a spreadsheet model or database. The literacy side of things, well, I'm definitely going to be introducing them to certain keywords and phrases that are subject specific. They're going to have to justify their designs to me, so they're going to be writing persuasively. They will be looking at text material, so they need to comprehend the written information that's available, etc. So down here, suggested suitable homework, home learning opportunities, detailing the health and safety requirements. If you're in a workshop, for example, you're going to be working with certain types of tools. They may need training on how to use those. And here I've detailed the appropriate level to which learners will be working towards. So GCSE E grades to A star is this topic. Now, moving down the table is where we're starting to set out a sequence of lessons. So, timing, self-explanatory really. How long roughly should this section last? I've just got a little lesson title here and a learning objective. So, to demonstrate the use of suitable data types for a customer table. Demonstrate, again, is a bit more higher thinking skills in the Bloom's learning domains. Again, thinking about the English maths opportunities here. Now, this is a suggested delivery method that I could advise staff or anybody else picking up this scheme of work. The sort of tasks that the learners will be requested to do. Again, the resources that they need. Importantly, how these sort of skills are going to be tested and how I'm going to assess that learners have taken on board what it is that we've discussed in this lesson. Let's not forget, walking around your learners and checking their work on is a good assessment strategy to use. Don't underutilise that, and document that you're going to be doing that. You will likely, in this subject, a lot of one-to-one support potentially, where feedback will be issued. Think about the plenaries that you're going to be doing. I thought it would be appropriate at this stage for learners to do a little self-evaluation, where I would give them a little template where they suggest 5 things that they've taken on board from the consequence of this lesson, for example. I'm going to have little mini plenaries throughout the session. Maybe at a halfway point I'll just pop this question up and ask the learners to write their response and share that with the group in 5 minutes time, for example. Useful just to plan those questions in there. So just to stress again, this is kind of a guide to help with the lesson planning. It's not the lesson plan itself, but it should just help any teacher or practitioner with an understanding of what it is that would make this lesson appropriate. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial video, and I hope you found this methodology that I use useful for planning your own schemes of work, which is required for your subject and required for the level 4 in education and training. Thank you very much.